Welcome to Deal Shredders.
We are your hosts, David and Greg.
We are local Nashville investors, cash buyers, and real estate agents who love to analyze your deals.
Hey, fellow listeners, thanks for tuning in. If you have not already, please check us out on Facebook, like us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or listen to us on Anchor or any other podcast means. We would love if you would leave us a review or some stars if you like what you hear. You listeners are what make our podcast grow, so please don't forget to tell your friends.
Welcome to Deal Shredders, Episode 9 with Matt Hearn. Matt is a great friend of mine who's going to talk about how he's worked a full-time job and got into the real estate investing game. He's accumulated over 30 units and building over 10 units over in a very short period of time. I get anxiety just thinking about it. Let's talk to Matt and see how he does it.
But dude, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
And glad to know you. Glad to, we have a really weird story of how we met. And I don't really know what it is, but when you called me, your number was in my phone. Do you remember that day?
Yeah.
You're like, it was 7 a.m. on a Saturday. You're like, do you know anybody looking for some rentals in Clarksville? I'm like, yeah, I'm here right now.
Yeah.
And I just went right there, and I think we got under contract that same day before you even got home.
Yeah, I was like, you want to sell some properties, and you were looking for some too. And so
yeah,
you bought one of them. So.
I bought one, and then I sold maybe
five or
six. So make sure. But guys, so we're on Deal Shredders. This is episode 9. We got Mr. Matt Hearn with us, who's been in the real estate game for how long now?
5 years in February.
Is it 5 years? Wow. I mean, I know that you've worked full-time as a software engineer. You've graduated from Tribeca in 2013 for information technology, which is pretty impressive. And right now, I just found out that you're enrolled at Auburn, trying to get your master's in real estate development.
Yep.
I mean, it's pretty impressive. So you're in college. You worked full-time up until last month, and you are acquired, I don't know, how many units?
Total with land and everything right now, we're right about 60.
Right about 60. Okay, so you're double of what I thought. Okay. 60, I know you've got the 10 builds in Gatlinburg. I know you've done multiple renos and like some stuff here and there. So, I mean, just tell us, like, what made you get started in real estate? Were you working the same job before?
Yeah, I was doing software engineering and kind of started looking for passive income and a way to start kind of building wealth over time and also just a way to start building alternative income streams that I wouldn't have to work for. And so found real estate was a really good match for that. It's a way to start building some additional income. And so dove into it, loved it. Went to Ren, met a bunch of people.
Okay.
And so just kind of dove in. First year, ended up getting 5 properties. And,
okay.
Mainly like condos actually. And then at the Spring Hill one, like properties here in Nashville, like some of those were really cheap properties when I got into it, like $15,000-$20,000. You can't really find those.
This is easy. I can do this all day long.
Can't really find those here anymore. But yeah, that's what I got started doing. And they were like the kind of properties like people would make fun of you for. They were not the attractive kind of properties.
Those are the best ones to get. So, I mean, you're working full time and you're just like, okay, I want to get into this real estate gig. So tell me a little bit about like when you very, very, very first started. Like, what was your schedule like? I mean, how did you work it all in? How did you learn what to do?
So, I mean, I kind of started mainly just getting educated and going to all the like REN meetings or like different seminars are getting put on and just started learning and just spent a lot of time on just education, dove into it, learning from other people, mentors, that kind of thing, just really kind of just got into it. And then over time, got into our first deal and dove into it. And at first it wasn't that time consuming. Like I would say up until I got about 10 units or so, it wasn't taking a ton of time, so it wasn't too bad to manage it.
What was the very first one?
Very first one was a condo in Pagoda, actually.
Pagoda
condominiums in Nashville, South Nashville.
All right.
Had some over there, and then some other ones over in Caldwell Court. So those were like the very first ones. Got some of those by direct mail, sending out direct mailers.
Okay.
When
direct mail worked.
When direct mail worked. With the condos, I actually ended up getting like the list of all the owners from a board member, and then literally just cold called
Yeah.
all the owners on the list, and
Yeah.
end up getting several people that sold me condos.
Dude, that's how you do it, man.
It worked out well. So got my first ones. But then kind of over time, like when you have a full-time job, you've got some advantages, I would say. Like some of the advantages there would be like you've actually got an income, so
Right.
you're bankable. That's a good thing.
And did you were you making the cold calls were you at work where you had time where you were flexible, or you were like, you come home from work and
After work, yeah.
after work?
It all started out after work. Spending a lot of evenings, early mornings, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And at first it wasn't as time consuming, and then towards the end, I mean, it was pretty much, I was working 7 days a week for a while.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
You kind of, getting up at 3:30 in the morning and working a few hours before work, and then working a couple hours after work, kind of thing. That was towards the very end.
Okay.
But for a while, it wasn't too bad. One of the main things I did was like leveraging technology. So I try, because you've got your time that you can leverage, and then you can leverage other people's. And so you start out trying to make the best use of your own time and leveraging it. So using all the available tools you can, and then expanding on that.
Let's unpack that a little bit. So, I mean, let's like, we're talking to people that are, I know I get a lot of people all the time that work full time and they want to get into real estate. Like, what tools did you use that they could use?
Yeah, absolutely. So like for property management, for example, we use Billium as a property management application. So that helps with efficiency for, accounting and letting residents pay online, so you're not having to collect rent checks, different things like that. They're super time consuming. I got a virtual assistant at one point in time, which was pretty helpful. And then made a lot of use of like different vendors for like direct mail while I was doing direct mail. So like Christy King, like she's the yellow letter lady.
Right.
I've used her before for some mailers. Used my own for a little while. I actually printed out my own letters for a little while.
Stuffed them, stamped them, addressed them, and sent them?
Absolutely. Sent out hundreds myself. But then there's companies out there that will also do it for you, like Christy King. And so then you can leverage other resources to do that for you.
So Christy King, does she do like a bulk mail?
Yeah. And she'll pull together a list for you. And
okay.
So you get the list, and then so that takes a lot of your time, because like having to aggregate lists is time consuming. You can have a virtual assistant doing it, or you can just get the list from a vendor.
That's like one thing that I make sure I do is I make my own list, because I want exactly where I want it to be.
Yeah. And otherwise you might be getting a lot of stuff that's not useful for you or whatever.
And you got to pay for all the direct mail, stuff like that. Hey guys, if you want to throw some questions, go ahead and throw them on there. We'll get to them at the end. But right now we're with Matt. He's talking about like how he's worked full time and got into real estate business. So far it looks like he's been working after work, sending out some direct mail, making cold calls to be able to get these deals. So how long did you work full time and do real estate?
Right at 5 years.
So you've been doing this for 5 years. So what made you stay with your job so long?
Part of it, like just having the stability of the income stream.
Sure.
And so that's one of the major advantages of having a full-time job, is because you actually don't have to depend on the income. And so I was able to reinvest everything that I was making for years. So like we ended up selling those condos that doubled or tripled in value, that were $20,000. We're able to take all that money and reinvest it, because I didn't need to live on the income.
Right.
So I would say that was one of the major advantages we had. Disadvantages being the time constraints,
right,
and having to work around that.
And you're also a licensed agent also.
Also a licensed agent.
So you went to school, got your real estate license, and don't you take some property management classes online and stuff like that we talked about? Yeah,
last year I went through pretty much all of IRM's property management courses. Went through like over 10 courses last year on property management, just trying to soak in and get as much knowledge as I could.
So you did that while you worked?
While I worked.
So when did you do the classes?
Did those early mornings. So I would wake up at 3:30 in the morning, work a few hours before I went to work, and then a little bit after work too, a couple hours.
Wow. So I mean, it seems like you just have to want it, and you have to make the time to do it.
You got to make.
Like, what was your schedule like? I mean, obviously after you did the property management classes, you still had things to do.
Yeah.
You had to work. I mean, it's not like you can call people at 3:30 in the morning.
No. So it's 3:30, like if we were getting up at 3:30 in the morning, a lot of what you're doing is like, for me, I spend time on coursework and that kind of stuff at first thing in the morning. organizing my day and planning it out, and then just getting ready for the day. And then phone calls I do after work. So any phone calls I'm doing, I either do like in the car when I'm driving to work,
Sure.
or after work. So a lot of times, like I would check in with contractors. I'd be in the office by 7:30. So leaving my house about 7, would call contractors during that period of time. So a lot of it, like just making the most efficient use of your time, like finding all those things that overlap. Like if you're in the car, you can make phone calls, that kind of thing, to try to get the most out of your time you possibly can.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely was a lot of sacrifice for a while, for sure.
Yeah.
And really anything in life that you're going to get that's worth anything is going to be some sacrifice to get there, I think.
Right. So I mean, if somebody's out there and they're like, man, I really want to be able to do this, it's like, like what could you tell them to do? Like, what's the first thing you would tell them to do?
The first thing would be definitely get involved in a REIT group, meet people that are in the business, they're doing this, partner on deals with them, like get out there, and that lets you use, leverage their knowledge, because you get in the business, you don't have any. So
how do you have time to like hunt deals and stuff like that? I mean, what does that look like?
You definitely got to get up early, get on wholesalers lists, set up MLS alerts with an agent.
Sure.
If you are an agent, obviously you can do that yourself. And send out direct mail. Like when you think about it, like doing direct marketing is another way, like you're leveraging time. So then you're not having to do the cold calling, you're just having to send out some letters. And then when you get the calls, you take them. And maybe you have to, take a call at work and walk out and take a break or whatever. Or maybe you try to schedule that with the seller in the afternoon.
Sure.
Now, you can also use a service like Pat Live to set up an answering service. So I did that at one point in time. Had an answering service that I used for any maintenance calls or calls that came in from sellers, that kind of stuff.
So you handle all your own property management too. Why did you not just handle, I mean, I know everybody's like, well, why don't you just hire a property manager?
So I found that we made more money managing ourselves. And so what we ran into in Clarksville, I was going to originally have a property manager in Clarksville. I never intended to manage those properties ever.
Okay.
That was not the plan, not in the cards.
So you bought them, you're like, I'm going to get somebody to manage this, and it just never happened for whatever reason?
So what happened was the first, like I talked to a bunch of different property managers, and I figured what I could probably get for the property is about $950 at the time. And I had one property manager who said the area was bad, 600 was the max he thinks I could get in the area. Another person was like $850. And so I'm like, so you guys are going to charge me 10% of my gross rent. You're going to under rent the property. So it's not just 10%. Like if that guy, and I ended up renting it myself, Section 8, for $950. And so I rented it out for $350 more than the one guy would have rented it out for. And then I didn't have to pay a management fee. Now, you got other expenses, like, I got part-time employees that I'd hired too towards the end when we were like starting to get more overwhelmed. And so they were doing a lot of that work too, like visiting properties and that kind of stuff.
So let's unpack your team a little bit. Like, obviously you're leveraging everybody. Like you're an agent, so you did your own property management. You said, well, you have a contractor. Like who are these key players that helped you,
build
keep the balls rolling?
Yeah, so I would say that's one of the most critical things is building a really reliable team, especially when you're trying to leverage resources and time. So with contractors, get a decent contractor, not one you're going to have to babysit, because if you have to babysit them, then that's going to take too much of your time.
Oh, yeah.
And so getting people you can really rely on really matters, like a good title company, a good contractor. For me, I had a property manager that I hired on staff and would teach them how to do like what we're doing. And some of that they learned through osmosis. Training, something I wasn't really the best at, still learning how to do that. Some of that was time constraints, but overall that really worked out because then they could go see the properties. If I'm buying a property, they could go check it out, see what it looks like, take pictures, that kind of stuff. That's something pretty basic. Contractor got the work done, they could go out and inspect the work. All that stuff I did myself originally, but then over time, got them to be able to do some of those tasks. And sometimes you just run out of time, so then you have to start leveraging other people.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we got. And so then I got hired a part-time bookkeeper. So then she would handle a lot of the accounting transactions that are coming in and get those reported. Hired someone to basically be paying bills, and so she would record the transactions. Had the property managers entering the bills as they're coming in from contractors, issuing checks, that kind of stuff. And then overseeing the work and making sure it got done.
So the contractors, shop for the material, pick up the material? Did you shop for the material for them?
I started out shopping for material.
Okay, I think we all start out doing that. Like, here's the Lowe's items numbers. You just make sure, because I know how that is. You want to make sure that
It's done right.
They're not spending too much on flooring and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, and so we started out. What we did is we created a master spreadsheet of all of the item numbers we used.
Okay, but they change like all the time.
They do change all. That was problematic. And so what we did, we started out doing that, and it actually worked out really well, because then we'd use, like, on each house we did the same thing. So it's like, what do we use for this? Go look at the spreadsheet, go pull the item numbers, and then what we do is we put them in a bulk order on a QSP, order everything at one time,
right?
And at Lowe's you get a really good discount for doing that, sometimes up to 50%, like on paint or
right.
high margin items.
Especially if you get a pro account, then they'll deliver for like $20, whatever.
Yep. So that's what we did. And another thing, leverage time, have the, Lowe's go and deliver stuff for $20.
Yeah.
And for contractors' time delivering it, versus theirs is better. So yeah, that's kind of what we did. And then over time, yes, I had a virtual assistant at the time, and she would update the list. So I'd have her periodically go check and update the list as the item numbers changed. Now we since have moved away from that, but
I'm sure.
Now I have an interior designer, like on the new builds we're doing. The interior designer is picking out all the materials that we're going to be using, all the furniture, all that stuff.
So I mean, your team is mostly contractors in the different locations. You got Gatlinburg, you've got Clarksville. You pretty much hire out an accountant.
Yep.
Your bookkeeper. What about like collecting rent checks? Who does all that kind of stuff? Who does the property management maintenance stuff?
Yep. So the application handles a lot of it, because anybody that pays online will get automatically entered in the system.
Right.
So the system will automatically post the ledger entries, all that kind of stuff.
How are you handling maintenance calls? Like, hey, my water heater's busted.
So I've got an assistant that takes all those calls to come in.
Gotcha.
So she'll take the calls in, enter them into the system, work with the tenants and contractors. So we've got vendors in each market, and then she'll call those vendors, like a plumber in that market, to go out and take care of the work. Vendors that a lot of times we've pre-approved or that we've got all their information for.
Okay.
In each of the given markets we operate in.
So that handles property management, maintenance calls, and rentals. What about like when you're hunting deals and stuff like that? I mean, when you were working full time, did you do all your own due diligence yourself, or did you leverage that too?
Most of that I did all myself.
Okay.
Initially, yeah, and that can be really time consuming.
Yes.
Hunting for the deals can be really time consuming. Actually, that was one of the things, like I never really outsourced, because I was always really like that aspect of things. So really focus on that. But yeah, it definitely is time consuming. I mean, I would hop on the MLS at the time when you could buy REOs and look for that stuff, or, on auction.com or whatever. Since then, those times are past.
So what about like finances? Like, I'm working full time. I want to get into real estate investing. I obviously want to get out of my job. Is there like a number that you like, I'm going to make sure my bills are covered plus X? Like if somebody wants to do that, like what does that look like?
To me, I mean, the key is like covering expenses. Once you've covered your expenses, you're free to.
Like, do you save a certain amount of time of expenses?
I mean, what the bankers would tell you is 6 months of expenses to a year.
So you want to try to save about 6 months of expenses. So you're gonna, you're doing deals and you're gonna get money off your deals, and you just basically wait until you have 6 months of expenses.
So I wait until I can cover all my expenses with rental income.
Well, or do that, sure.
And then also had the savings and stuff, which might be an abundance of caution there, but so that's what I was really shooting for. I mean, I would say you have a job, so that's you've got the bankability, you've got the capability to save money, and so definitely be saving anything you can for investment, and then you definitely utilize the income stream you've got.
Right. So when I got into real estate, I worked for like 6 months. I didn't do the 5-year plan. I worked I worked a good 6 months or so full time, and got into real estate for I saved like 6 months worth of bills too, and that was kind of like the key. But I also,
it's very freeing. Yeah.
Well, there's that, but like also living right, like not having a car payment, driving a crappy car. Like I still have a truck that's 10 years old that's paid off. That like I do some body damage to at least every 6 months, and I don't pay. I don't care. It's like living under your means, like having a mortgage that you're don't buy new houses.
I can speak to that too. I mean, we've got paid off cars.
Right.
There was a house that I really wanted. I got a really good deal. I've had to walk away from 2 deals this past year.
Oh, so that's right. We were looking at those. So you never moved forward on those 2?
Didn't move forward on the lot. Didn't move forward on the house I was looking at moving into.
It's like you could afford it, but you'd rather be able to afford it later after you're having more cash flow.
Yeah, and I knew like I'd be making a transition, and so at that point, like, did I want the extra stress and risk of it? And so I ended up not, and so kept my lower payment house instead of upgrading on a house. I've looked at cars, just kind of to look at cars, but I might, it might be 3-4 years before I buy another one because I've got a paid off car.
I know, same here. Like, there's so many times I go to the Ford dealership, I got to get the new F-150, and then I'm like, nah. Because theoretically, I mean, I could buy a house in Clarksville for the same prices of F-150.
Sure.
Just buy the house.
Sure, absolutely.
And I'd rather buy an appreciating asset than a depreciating asset.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah, look at a luxury car. Like, you go like $50,000 that a year later is worth, 25.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so we're bringing our expenses down. We're leveraging people. We're leveraging time. We're getting up really early in the morning. What else you got for these people?
Yeah, I would say like definitely getting out there and just doing it. Like it's hard. It's going to be hard. You just got to kind of embrace the suck for a while on the time commitment to things. But I would say you can also leverage other people, partners. So you might find people that are in the real estate business full time and they do have the time. So you can partner with them on deals. You can, invest with them in the deals because you've got the money, but you don't have the time.
Right.
Invest with them and start getting the education.
So what about the people that are wanting to get in? They don't have deals. They don't know how to hunt the deals, and they got no money.
Got nothing.
What value could those people bring to a partnership?
Just the sweat equity, because when you're getting into it, it's a lot like due diligence. Like I can teach somebody how to do due diligence.
Sit at codes, call these people, find these numbers, run these spreadsheets.
Yeah, I'll give them the spreadsheet. Like, here's the spreadsheet. Yeah. I need you to track down the numbers. Here's how to track down the numbers. Here's who all to go talk to.
Well, and that's a good point. Even like with an apartment, somebody that's going to go through all the leases, going to go through all the expenses, going to make the calls and see if there's actually a deal there.
Get all the estoppel letters done, like any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Due diligence for an apartment complex can be 50, 100 hours.
Well, even a flip, maybe they can be making the calls for material and calling the roofers and getting bids and stuff like that.
Absolutely, and that provides a lot of value for people. So you can definitely get in the game that way and just partner and get sweat equity for doing it. You can also go and hunt down deals. You can go and start knocking on doors. That's old fashioned, right? But
just people, cold calling, knocking on doors.
That's free.
Well, here's the thing too. Another thing that people can do is that they overlook is look at for sale by owners on Zillow, Craigslist, anywhere, like wholesaling lists that we talked about that.
Start building your network. Start meeting other people that are in the business and talk to them about deals. There's plenty of networking groups out there. People are pitching deals.
And talking to bankers, getting banking relationships, hard money lending relationships.
Investors, like
investors,
pull cash together for deals.
Yeah.
So maybe you have a lot of friends that are also like wanting to get in the business and you can help pull together funds for a deal.
I had a conversation one time. Somebody called me and he was a bartender downtown, and like all of those bartenders downtown are making like $100 and something grand a year.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, well, how do we do this? I'm like, talk to your friends that are also making $150,000 a year, because at the end of the day, you're gonna work with people that you like, know, and trust. They're usually your friends and people that you know.
Absolutely.
So all y'all are in the same boat, working downtown till 4 in the morning. You've got all this cash. Get together and put a game plan together.
Absolutely.
Get out of working till 4 a.m.
Oh, and developers are happy to give you a chunk of a deal for helping them pull the deal together. Whether that means going and even putting in the earnest money for a deal, or whether it means going and helping source the capital for the deal. Yeah. Just helping with due diligence. That's a huge time commitment.
Yeah.
And if you've got the time, like after work or before work, a lot of that stuff can be done that way. And just putting the time and sweat equity.
A lot of this, of course, Metro is a little more difficult, but Clarksville, you can call the street, I forget what it's called, but for the stormwater.
Oh,
You can email zoning. You can call them. They open up at 7. Like you can do a lot of that stuff without having to spend time to go down to Metro Codes.
Oh yeah, you just call. I mean, and if you got time in the morning when you're driving, you can literally schedule those calls in the morning on the way.
Yeah.
And make the calls. You got a lunch break, use it. Like make phone calls on your lunch break.
Send the emails out, wait for the replies and stuff like that. Yeah.
A lot of us say sending the emails out, that kind of stuff.
I'm gonna go ahead and peek on my phone to see if we have any questions because I want to see if we can answer any of them. I'm gonna go to my page. Guys, so I mean, what are we thinking so far about Matt's? I mean, is this helping? If it's not helping, we want to know what we can do. You know, what questions we can answer. I'm gonna turn the volume off on my phone. Okay, so here's a really good question because Tiffany has a good point, and she wants to know like how you financed your first deal because you're working full time, right?
Yep.
So your DTI and stuff is pretty much your living expenses. Like, so how did you get to do the first? Like, how did you finance that first deal?
So the very first 2 deals we did, I'll give you the first 2. The second one was pretty interesting too. So the first one, I initially had a partner, and so he put in cash, and then we had that for the down payment. Went to the bank, got a loan, and these are like the first loan I got. The bank put it on a 5-year amortization.
What?
They're like, "You're new. We don't like this area you're in with these condos."
Now, why did they take the? Okay, so what did you do to get the bank to work with you? How did you pitch the deal? How did you pitch yourself? I mean, so I feel like sometimes you have to sell yourself. Like you put the package together for the bank. Like tell us a little bit about that.
We both had strong incomes, and so for us, we had the income that we could have covered anything, so it wasn't going to be a problem. So we did have that going for us, and then we had the cash. So we had over a year's worth of payments in the bank at the time, and then we put in some bit of a down payment, and the property was so cheap. It could literally support in the cash flow a 5-year amortization.
Yeah. So this was a rental.
This was a rental, and we kept it as a rental. It was Section 8, which, I mean, I'm definitely a big fan of Section 8. Talking about leveraging time, that's one way to do it. Like, I didn't have to worry about hunting tenants down for money because the government was paid most of it.
Sometimes you got to lock in that first loan just to take it down.
And start getting experience, yeah.
Getting experience because, I mean, now that you're going to get some cash flow, you can refi out of that 5-year AM. Did you refi out of that 5-year AM?
We did eventually. We paid the property off, like 40% of the property off in 2 years.
Yeah,
so
they forced you to. But then again, so now you got appreciation 2 ways by paying it off quickly and the market appreciation.
Absolutely.
So you were probably able to refi out. That's part of the suck, as you call it.
That's
get through the suck. The suck is like not only your time, but like dealing with these ridiculous terms, but you got it done.
You got it done.
And you were able to refi out, and now you probably got some cash to refi out and buy another property.
Absolutely. In the second one we did, and that one I did myself, we structured it, and this was one that I had sent out letters, direct mail letters, and so I got a seller that called me, wanted to sell the house, and she was in a situation, she had back taxes she needed to sell. And so I ended up buying that condo for $15,000. Needed a little bit of work. She actually loaned the money, non-recourse actually, on an unsecured note.
Okay.
And so non-recourse, unsecured note.
Thank you.
So didn't have a loan against the property at all, but they got a hard money lender to put in some of the cash they needed because the deal with her was I was going to give her like $5,000 now, $10,000 later. And you did like $100 a month for 100 months. So it's a 0% interest loan, amortized over 7 to 8 years. And
that, you just brought up a really good point. Like when you're getting into the business and you don't have the cash, find sellers with properties that are paid off that will do an owner finance note.
Absolutely.
Because especially if there's a lot of equity, it's really good for them because they don't want, it's like, you don't want to take a tax hit. Well, why don't I just pay you over time? If I'm going to pay 20% down to a bank, I might as well give it to you. So here's some money right now. You've got some cash. You don't need all of this money now. Let me pay you over time and then refi out of that.
Sure, absolutely. In this case, because it was an unsecured promissory note, there was no lien on the property, so I was immediately able to go to the bank, stripped all of it out, and then was able to go use that, got a credit line against the property for the full value.
So how do you get a seller to agree to something like that?
In her case, she definitely needed the cash and needed to be able to close. And she also trusted me.
Yeah, you got to. Yeah, people. you have to sell yourself as like a legit person. It's like, look, you know, I've done this before, and it's almost like if you think about it, like with the banks, it's like almost like applying for a job. It's like, look, like here's the other people that I've worked with, call any of them. Like, you know, it's like, here's my developer friend that I work with. Here's all these people. Like, use those people as references.
And people want to help.
Yeah.
What you find is a lot of sellers actually want to help you.
Yeah.
And so she actually wanted to help me, and she liked me, and so she was happy to do it.
Yeah.
And I paid her $100 a month. And it also showed like the value in it, because for her, you know, I figured out what her needs were. She was willing to go buy a car. And so I figured out about what she would need. And so the note was going to pay for her car payment.
Yeah.
And
sweet. And then you probably did you give her a down payment?
Yeah, so she got the $5,000 down and the $10,000 on the note. So she got the $5,000 she was able to use to go put a down payment on a car.
Cool. Let's see. Mashika, I hope I said your name right, Mashika. With you working full-time, how did you find the right people to build your team? And we'll just start with that one. She's got 2 questions. We'll start with that one. How'd you find the right people with working full-time? How'd you have time to interview these people? How'd you have time to qualify them?
So one of the key things there, I think, would be getting involved in a RIA group and meeting other people that are, you know, in the business.
So back to leveraging people. And
then you can ask them, because they have the contacts, and say, you know, who do you have for an HVAC guy? Who do you have for this reliable handyman? Someone that you know, like, and trust. And see who they'll give you. And so then you can take their references and the people that they would give you and use them, because if they're part of their team, then they're probably pretty decent. Now with contractors, you might cycle through a few, so maybe they're decent at the time, and then it might not be later. Yeah. A few other life circumstances.
So it's like, so she also asked, how do you find people that are willing to sell or finance? Really, it depends on their needs.
It's all about the need. I mean, you get and you might run into some cases where people might own or finance because of tax situations. They might not be a motivated seller even, but I mean, I have one seller that she sent under financing because she didn't want to take the full hit of the tax.
Yeah.
And so she was able to distribute the tax hit over, 10 years or 15 years.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing. So
plus they're getting a monthly check.
Yep.
So they don't have to worry about the property anymore. They get a down payment. I mean, I've seen 5, 10, 20%, whatever you negotiated. I mean,
0%, whatever. But
0%, or even the terms of the loan. A lot of them are, you're not paying any interest. Maybe you negotiate. Maybe you give them a little bit more down to not get any interest, or a little bit mix of both. Yeah, I mean, it's really just depends on like what they want. If somebody okay, so if you're buying a rental, if they're used to getting $700 a month for rent, why don't you just pay them $700 a month, or $6 or $7, something close to that? So they're used to getting the same cash flow. Now they don't have to worry about the property, and they got like a down payment.
And you find a lot of landlords that will sell properties that are burned out. That's one definitely a group to target. I mean, people that are going through different situations, whether it's they got behind on their payments, they went through a divorce, whatever it may be, medical, or maybe they're just tired and they want to sell the property, and so for them. And I think one of the key things is finding out what people's hurt is. What's the reason, motivation for selling, and then you can structure and craft the deal around that.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing it, it's really just a person-to-person transaction that you just work out.
Absolutely.
Like for me, it's like even when I'm going to buy a property from a seller, it's like I want them to know I'm legit. Here's my proof of funds. Here's my bank letter for the rest of it. Here, like
I can close this deal. I can take away your problem.
Yeah, it's like I can't do this. Like and being a licensed agent, we are held to a certain point of ethics where people trust us a little bit different sometimes.
That's definitely
so like they can. I mean, it's really easy to make my life miserable if I make a mistake with the seller or a buyer.
Oh sure, yeah.
Like
the commission.
I mean, not only that. It's not even about commission. Like you Google
to your broker.
You Google us, and you could find our license numbers, and you could they can call your brokers. They could make it's really easy to make my life hell.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure I perform on these, and I stick to my contingencies and my contracts. Like I turn my earnest money in. I treat it like a transaction. I send them a picture of the check. I make sure they get the receipt at the title company. And just by being legit.
Absolutely, yeah. Building trust. That's a lot of it. Building trust with the seller and showing that you're going to be able to deliver, because they have a problem they're trying to get solved, and they want to know that you can actually solve the problem.
Yeah. So I don't want to get too far into owner financing, but those are really good tips, and I hope that answers her question. But like, I mean, there's a lot of people out there. I think that, it's leveraging time, getting up early and staying up late. I mean, it's just like when you
putting in the time.
just think about it. I mean, when you went to school, you got up early and you stayed up late. You have to have your own self-discipline to get up and just get your shit together and get to work.
Yeah.
Without somebody having to tell you, and going to the meetings, meeting as many people as you can, earning credibility, just building relationships, going out and having beers and treating people to lunch, and on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday.
Yep,
stuff
absolutely.
like that. I mean, it's definitely doable.
And see what you can do to help other people.
Yeah.
And
add value.
And you got to add value. So maybe it could be maybe investors like, hey, well, you go knock on a bunch of doors for me.
That brings me to a good point, because people reach out to me, and I'm sure to a lot of people, a lot of investors, and especially in the RIA groups, it's like, oh, I'm looking for a mentor. Who wants to mentor me? What are you gonna do to add value for me to stop what I'm doing to want to work with you? It's like, what are you gonna do? It's like it's all about just adding value all around.
Absolutely.
And that conveys into the rest of your working relationship to when you are full time.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, whether that means you can make a connection for somebody. I mean, I've had that happen before. I mean,
yes,
whatever you can do.
Yeah. So did we cover everything?
I think we did. Yeah.
I know you've got your notes right there.
Yeah,
this is an analytical guy right here.
Yeah, that's me.
Like, he wanted to make sure he turned this into me and everything. It's like, but like, I hope we've helped everybody out. So I mean, this is Matt Hearn. Do you have any deals? Do you have anything for sale? Anything that anybody wants? Do you have anything you want to pitch?
No, not right now. I mean, right now we're just really working through our lots in Gatlinburg. We'll have an apartment complex that we'll be selling in Huntsville at some point this year.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me about that. What is the status on that?
So right now we are getting a GC involved to finish up the project. We got it to the stage where we could to pass it off.
What's the time frame you think?
6 months or so.
Okay, so 6 months.
It was a full gut of an apartment
complex. Are you going to make it occupied, or you can sell occupied or not occupied?
Fully stabilized.
So fully stabilized. So what do you think? What are you going to sell at? What cap do you think you're gonna?
I think we'll probably sell it at 8.
Okay.
Probably sell for about $850, and then cap rate 7 to 8, or like 7 to 7.5.
Would you consider keeping it and financing with somebody? Would you want to sell it, or
would
you partner with it?
We'll probably want to sell it and then get most of our cash out of it.
Got you.
And maybe that could be a good thing for somebody. I could be looking for some sweat equity on that project. I'm trying to also leverage time as well.
Yeah.
I'm still, even now that I'm working full time in the business, I'm still strapped for time. So
I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah, so
because you got the apartment in Huntsville. I know you've got the 10 in Gatlinburg. Clarksville, I mean, you just have your single family rentals
managing up there.
Or got you.
And I've got the apartment complex in Minville we're managing too. So we're spread out to several different cities, so always have a lot going on. We were renovating 2 condos in Gatlinburg right now, and when we get done with those, we've got several bills will be starting.
Could you Airbnb the ones in Gatlinburg that you're renovating?
Yeah, those will all be Airbnb, and for that.
I'm gonna tag a good friend of mine that she has one. She loves her Airbnb out there in Gatlinburg. That's for you, Juliet. You're welcome.
Yeah, we definitely. What we've done out there, we are going to be managing our own out there, unfortunately. Because we found the local management company charge 30 to 40% of gross revenues. So we found that clearly it's going to be hard to make deals work for that. And so we're actually going to be managing those ourselves, since we got the software and all that kind of stuff to leverage the platforms.
Cool.
So.
All right, guys. Well, this is episode 9 of Deal Shredders. I think we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
How can people get a hold of you, by the way?
So LinkedIn would be great, or LinkedIn, Facebook.
Okay. Or just get a hold of me, and I can
get a hold of Greg.
Yeah.
Greg will get a hold of me.
I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna shut her down, guys.